We've heard about return to work from a variety of different sources. What does that, in your mind, look like for Detroit?
So for Detroiters, it's likely there's going to be those who've been working from home, a bit of a hybrid model. And the employer does have the right to ask for your proof of vaccination because they want to make sure that if you're not vaccinated, it's totally your choice, but you need to protect yourself and protect others around you. So there's going to be guidance on proving your vaccination status and then also wearing a mask. Even if you are fully vaccinated, also, they still may require you to wear a mask from your employer. So they do have jurisdiction on the control of mask wearing. It's going to be a process where, we at the City of Detroit have the ability to consult with businesses if they have questions too. We can always connect the community with the environmental health to make sure that it's hopefully stressless and organized to get back to work.
Returning to work, a lot of employers are doing somewhat of a hybrid model. So I'm seeing a lot of slow transition and respecting of those that don't want to get the vaccine and those that are, believers of getting the vaccine. And I'm probably one of those ones that have not pushed anyone to get the vaccine. But I think that's just mainly because of my HR background and being careful about and sensitive to those that have some concerns around obtaining the vaccine. A lot of employers, especially the smaller ones, might be somewhat out of compliance, but there are guidelines out there that should direct the employers into how to create a safe place or work environment for employees to feel comfortable in coming back to work. There are some OSHA regulations that they have to provide a safe and comfortable environment for those employees to return back to work. The answer of can an employer mandate a vaccine is yes, but like the legal, it kind of depends on different situations. There's reasonable accommodations, and if you're someone that has a disability or religious belief that is not in line with obtaining the vaccination, then you need to talk to your employer about that. There's going to be situations and that not all employees are comfortable, and employers need to be sensitive surrounding that and be careful about how they're asking questions.
You said something that was interesting. Yeah, so certainly being sensitive. If I could just go back a little bit, because we know that this is both a health issue, but it's also liabilities, it's workforce. You mentioned that there might be some employers that are out of compliance. So could you talk a little bit about, if I'm an employee and I'm returning to work, what are the things that the employee should be looking for in terms of safety in that workplace environment?
Sure, great question. And it's typically a lot of small business employers because they're not aware, of everything that they need to have with them at the time. But I would be asking for some type of plan. What's your plan for having people return back to work? You can ask questions surrounding like what things are they putting in place, such as, are there signs up telling employees to continue to get their hands washed, keep social distancing in place, 6 feet from each other, and if not, wearing a mask when you're closer. HVAC questions. So making sure that there's a clean airflow going through the building. And that's stuff that your HR manager should know, or some of the owners should know and be aware of. What are the disinfecting practices within the workplace? What's going on? A lot of these things aren't just written down. And so that's kind of where they could be out of compliance. And so having that stuff written down and, being able to give that to the employee when there is questions can kind of ease some of the nerves when returning back to work.
About that. And where do you recommend that employers of any level, because as you well know, many small businesses, as well for that matter, many nonprofits don't have the opportunity to be able to hire HR. So, you've got executive directors and managers who are doing that important work literally off the side of their desk as well. Where do folks go right now, do you recommend, to be able to develop those return to work policies and some of those best practices that can also be obviously shared with boards of directors and also shared with employees? Where do employers go?
There's so much guidance out there right now, but I think where I would recommend for any employer, small business employers in Michigan to go to is the Michigan, it's called the Michigan Department of Labor and Economic Opportunity.
Okay.
And
Thank
they'll
you.
be able.
Yeah, as you
Sure.
said, there is quite a bit. Do you have any guidance to employers? So let's say people are coming back into our various offices, and not everyone is vaccinated. So you've got a mixed group, people who are vaccinated, some people who are not. What are the requirements, and what are some of the conversations should be happening around the issue of exposure and how to contain that? Any recommendations?
There's not really any type of requirements around. I mean, if you're in a healthcare setting and you're working with a lot of individuals that are maybe have their health compromised, there might be a requirement in that situation. So like a hospital setting. But most employers, even though they legally can require it, they don't have to. I mean, there's steps that they have to go through. So they have to go through like undue hardship risk evaluation, and then they also want to consider the disability and the religious piece components that fall underneath it.
What's your sense of how many employers are looking at a return to work, even though you said it'll be probably some kind of hybrid format? What have you seen in the literature and as you talk about your various customers?
I've seen a lot. It varies widely. So some of the customers have, basically given up their office and they're planning to go completely remote and cut that cost out. And others are doing more of a hybrid model where they're, bringing employees back into the workplace, but just slowly. So it's kind of a split situation. I know some employers are very anxious in getting their staff back into the workplace just to have that camaraderie and just the collaboration. But there's so many tools out there now that employers can use to collaborate with one another, and that they've kind of been forced to throughout this year. And so now it's kind of a common tool that most employers will use.
What are the requirements, if any, for employers to provide to the community or to employees about the number of infections that have occurred in that setting, or even for that matter, what percentage of personnel are vaccinated? Are there any requirements around that?
So there is a OSHA requirement that you have to indicate if there's any fatalities surrounding that. An illness was occurred within the workplace, and that comes out every April of every year, and it's posted for about 30 days. Other than that, there's not much other data that I can think of off the top of my head that would be required. I don't think that employers are required to say, hey, percentage of the workplace is been vaccinated.
You can find more at onedetroitpbs.org or subscribe to our social media channels and sign up for our One Detroit newsletter.